The boy's name was Mateo Cruz, and at just 11 years old, life had already carved deep lines into his young soul. He lived in a narrow alley in Tondo, Manila, where the air smelled of rusted metal, fried oil, and survival. His mother had died 2 years earlier from an untreated illness, and his father had vanished long before that, leaving Mateo to live with his aging grandmother who sold boiled bananas by the roadside. Every morning before sunrise, Mateo pushed a battered wooden cart through traffic, selling sampaguita garlands to jeepney drivers and office workers who barely looked at his face. But when night fell and the city softened its noise, Mateo found refuge in the only place that made sense to him, an abandoned community center with a broken upright piano missing 3 keys. That piano had once belonged to a school before funding disappeared. To Mateo, it was not broken. It was alive. He learned to play by ear, memorizing melodies from radio fragments drifting through open windows, pressing cracked keys until his fingers bled, teaching himself harmony without knowing the word for it. On the other side of the city lived Veronica Hastings, a millionaire socialite from the United States, married into old money and accustomed to a life where everything bent to her will. She was in Manila for a charity gala hosted inside one of the most expensive hotels in Southeast Asia. The event was meant to showcase generosity, but behind the glittering chandeliers and champagne glasses, it was more about image than impact. Veronica believed deeply in appearances. She believed poverty was a result of laziness, that talent only mattered if it came wrapped in polish, and that compassion should always be controlled. Her husband, Richard Hastings, was quieter, observant, and visibly uncomfortable with the way his wife spoke about the poor as if they were statistics rather than people. That afternoon, Mateo entered the hotel not as a guest but as a delivery helper. A florist had hired him to carry extra boxes in exchange for leftover food. His clothes were clean but worn, his sandals too small, and his eyes wide with wonder as he stepped onto marble floors that reflected chandeliers like stars trapped indoors. While waiting near the ballroom entrance, Mateo heard something that stopped him cold. A grand piano stood unattended near the stage, glossy black, flawless, glowing under warm lights. He had never seen a piano like that outside of television. His fingers twitched instinctively. He moved closer, almost unconsciously, forgetting where he was. When Mateo sat on the bench and pressed a single key, the sound filled the hall like a held breath. Conversations paused. He played another note, then another, and before fear could catch him, his hands began to move. What poured out of that piano was not a simple tune. It was raw, layered, aching. A melody born from hunger, loss, and hope. Guests turned. Phones lifted. Silence spread. And then laughter cut through it. Veronica Hastings stood up slowly, clapping once, sarcastically. She walked toward the boy, heels clicking like punctuation marks. She looked him up and down, eyes narrowing with disbelief and amusement. She asked who let him touch the piano. Someone whispered that he was just a helper. Veronica smiled thinly and said loudly that it was sweet to see ambition, but charity was not the same as reality. Then she said the words that would change everything. If you can really play this piano, she said, not just noise, I'll adopt you myself. The room gasped. Some laughed nervously. Mateo stopped playing, his hands trembling. Richard Hastings felt his stomach drop. He recognized the cruelty hidden inside his wife's smile. He tried to interrupt, but Veronica raised her hand. She wanted a show. She wanted to prove a point. Mateo looked around, confusion and shame burning his cheeks. He thought of his grandmother, waiting for him with empty pots. He thought of the broken piano back home. Then he nodded. He sat back down, closed his eyes, and began again. What followed was not a performance. It was a confession. Mateo played a piece no one recognized, something he had composed without knowing he was composing. The melody rose and fell like Manila itself, chaotic and tender. It spoke of lullabies sung by candlelight, of sirens at night, of hunger that never sleeps, and dreams that refuse to die. By the time his fingers lifted from the keys, the room was crying. Grown men wiped their eyes. A violinist from the orchestra stood in shock. Even the waitstaff had stopped moving. Veronica did not clap. She could not. Her confidence cracked, but pride held her spine straight. She said it was impressive, rehearsed even. She asked where he learned. Mateo answered softly that he learned alone. That answer unsettled the room more than any note. Richard stepped forward and asked the boy what he wanted. Mateo said he wanted nothing. He only wanted to play. The gala ended early. Videos of the performance exploded online overnight. By morning, the clip had millions of views across the United States. People were furious at Veronica, inspired by Mateo, and demanding accountability. News outlets dug deeper. That was when the first twist emerged. A retired music professor from Juilliard identified the boy's composition as structurally complex, something rarely achieved even by trained musicians. He called Mateo a prodigy. As the world watched, another truth surfaced. Richard Hastings revealed in an interview that Veronica herself had once been adopted from poverty as a child, a fact she had hidden for decades. The revelation shattered her public image. Sponsors pulled away. The charity organization distanced itself. Veronica retreated from the spotlight, facing a truth she had buried, that she had become the very thing she once feared. Meanwhile, Mateo's life transformed rapidly but not easily. Offers came flooding in, scholarships, interviews, promises. But Mateo refused to leave Manila without his grandmother. When a prestigious American conservatory offered full sponsorship, he asked if his grandmother could come too. They agreed. Before Mateo left the Philippines, he returned to the hotel one last time. This time, he was invited. The same piano waited. So did Veronica. She stood alone, without cameras, without confidence. She apologized, not as a socialite, but as a broken woman. She admitted that mocking him had been easier than facing herself. Mateo listened quietly. Then he did something no one expected. He forgave her. He did not accept adoption. He said he already had a family. But he thanked her for one thing, for daring him to play. Years later, Mateo Cruz performed at Carnegie Hall, his grandmother watching from the front row. His first composition was titled Manila Night. Veronica Hastings funded music programs anonymously, her name absent by choice. Richard Hastings divorced quietly, choosing